Here we go. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the show. So, this is a moment for me. This is actually my first in-person podcast
Ever?
ever.
God.
I've done like
I'm so
five.
nervous. You're
I'm
first?
I'm
What am I gonna
nervous.
do?
I'm nervous. I've done like 500 episodes and I've never done one in person, so I like don't even know what to do. I have to like have my notes, all the things.
Yeah, I was trying not to judge you out loud.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, but if you're gonna do it, if you're gonna do it,
They're
might as
way
well do
more
it.
fun in person. I've been really working to have more on my show in person. So it's like literally the same as going out to dinner, but now it's a conversation in person instead of a Zoom call, and just millions of people get to listen in. I mean, what could go wrong?
I don't know where to look. Like, do I? Normally,
Well,
I'm like looking at my notes,
we
and I'm.
actually, I mean, we're in my studio, so you should probably tip a little bit more towards me.
Yeah.
And our photographer is going to be like, God, but that's right. You could just tip a little bit more because otherwise your head's going to be all weird.
Okay.
So,
Well,
and like right now, this camera, I probably ought to be like a little bit over there by the light, but I'm not going to worry. And yours is totally good aimed at you. Are you nervous
Dave
now?
has the skills. I am very nervous.
What? There's nothing to be nervous about.
Okay, so the agenda for right now, I wanted to do an AMA with you. I asked the audience for questions.
That's all I am.
I got a lot of questions for Dave Asprey, who I am here with. And some of them came in. I was like, oh, some of these are kind of spicy. So then I did a follow-up and I was like, can I get spicy questions for Dave Asprey?
So
So
it's like butthole sounding and all that.
yeah, that's all the
Okay,
things.
can't wait.
So I hope you're ready.
All right,
Can we jump in?
let's do it. Ask me anything.
Okay. So to start things off, we have from Nancy, oh, how exciting. That's all caps with like exclamation
Hey,
points.
Nancy.
Nancy, she says, have him make you danger coffee
I already
And-
kind of did that for the photo shoot.
and do some cold plunge Q&A style, no, Q&A question style like Rachel Varga. Those inspired me right into the cold river by her house. So you got her into the cold river. And side note, I actually have never done a cold plunge, even though I do cryotherapy every day.
Oh my gosh. You know, the sun was still up when you came over for the coffee photo shoot. We could have hopped in the cold plunge,
I know, but we did not.
but you just kind of didn't. And now it's dark, so we couldn't do it. I say we got out of that. Guys, I think you should leave a comment and just encourage cold plunges.
I do.
With all sorts of reasons, like scientific reasons, as well as like kind of what motivates you best, like motivational
The lack of
or
inflammation.
like shameful, like which kind of motivation is like you're a bad person if you don't do it, or like
No,
you're a
I
better
don't
person
do
if you
I don't do all of that.
Okay, good.
I need,
so guys, you know
I
what she
need-
doesn't deal. So do the stuff she doesn't deal well with until she gets in the cold plunge, and then you win.
Possibly. I do well with
Don't do
like
that. Be nice.
Okay. I do well with like, this will make you an amazing person and you'll be a very good girl if you do this. That's what I do.
You don't have a huge amount of body fat, so for you, a very cold plunge is going to be more effective in the long run. Like normally, it's 3 to 6 minutes that you would do
In the water.
in the water, and for you, it's probably just 90 seconds, right? And it's enough
Yeah.
to get your body so your dopamine levels are where you want them to be, but you don't need to turn on more calorie burning, right? So if it depends on how much lean mass you have, and then the percentage of body fat. And if you're super lean, doing a long cold plunge is harder than someone who has padding. And I'm down to about 6.5% body fat right now. And I can do, 10-minute cold plunge, but I probably shouldn't. And 6 minutes is really the upper limit where you see most of the benefits.
So I can go for like a minute.
Yeah, just get in a sauna so you're nice and warm, and then do 1 minute.
That's easy.
Yeah.
If I get hot first.
Do that, and for
then
you, that's fine. What you're doing is there's a dopamine response, and then there's a cold shock protein and burning more calories and more brown fat. For you, it's the dopamine response that's going to be most important. So brief
down.
and unpleasant equals good.
Okay. I'll do it. To-do list. I'll report back. Okay. Very important question. This comes from Vanessa. Vanessa Spina, the co-host of the Intermittent Fasting podcast.
Hey, Vanessa.
This might be the most important question you've ever been asked. Are you ready? What is his favorite emoji and why? Think carefully.
I am a huge fan of emojis that can be misinterpreted.
Okay.
So you just don't exactly know what the person meant. So they cause more trouble than they actually solve.
So what emoji is that?
All the ones you would send in 7th grade.
Such as?
Usually certain types of nightshade vegetables.
Fruits? Vegetables?
It's a
Fruits and
nice shade.
vegetables,
It's purple. Well, what could that be?
eggplants.
That's a good idea. Okay, yeah, that one. Yeah, I didn't think of it, but
Dave
okay.
Asprey's favorite emoji
Yeah.
is an eggplant.
I would say it's one of mine. But anytime you can say something, you're like, wait a minute, and you just aren't quite sure,
Yeah.
those are the fun ones. So it depends on context, but it has to be one that's unclear and probably could have a bad connotation.
Have you noticed that the little twin girl emojis, they're Playboy bunnies?
No, there's a
Have you
twin
noticed that?
Playboy bunny.
So it's like two
Where's that?
girls, and it's supposed to be like kids or twins or girls, but they're wearing Playboy bunny ears.
Is this grooming?
Is this
I think it might be.
grooming?
It's like Disney did that, didn't they?
No, yes. Like kind of how like Disney sneaks in all the stuff everywhere.
Yeah, pretty
So
sure.
fun fact.
It's like even going back to like Snow White and stuff like that.
Yeah. My favorite emoji is the sparkles.
Of course. You know, I use the sparkles a lot, actually.
I love the sparkles.
And also there's another magical one. Oh, and then like the crown ones. I use those a lot.
The crown?
For friends. Like the regal crown. Those are good.
I like the fog one.
Oh, that's cool.
It's like a smile. Okay.
Right. But that was not a question I've ever answered before.
Really?
Yep.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm excited. Okay. Okay, so we have to answer. This is the intermittent fasting podcast, in case you were wondering.
Okay.
So we have fasting questions for you.
But just only sometimes, right? Because it's intermittent.
You said that when you were on the Melanie. No, you were on. Dave was on the Melanie Avalon Biohacking podcast, and you pointed that out.
I did.
You did.
I repeated a dad joke
So,
without knowing it.
It's all good.
I'm out of drugs. It's not drugs.
So this is something I have actually thought about a lot. This comes from Lizzie. She says, "How come we're allowed to drink black coffee and tea on a fast? Surely only water. I always felt that it's a loophole for coffee drinkers, or at least if we're able to drink coffee and tea, there must be other substances available." I have thought about this so much. Have you thought about this?
I have, and one of the really important things that I've been asking myself is, why are you allowed to drink water during a fast?
Because it's non-caloric. It's just H2O. It's your body. Your body's a lot of water.
Not having calories is what tea and coffee
Not having
calories. I'm getting really confused already.
I know.
And why are you allowed to breathe on a fast?
That's a good question.
Well,
no nutrients.
Breath work is pretty much intermittent fasting.
Yes.
For your lungs.
True.
Right? But strangely, we have all these weird rules about what we're allowed and not allowed to do while we're fasting that are based on nothing that's about science or thinking. They're just, I don't know, there was a lab test where the mice only had water because mice don't have espresso machines and they were locked in little mouse prisons. So because a scientist in the 1950s, probably, wearing a white lab coat and weird goggles, was mean to mice, then you should only have water. Sounds good to me. Or you could say, what are the hallmarks of things that cause a fast and break a fast? And what will cause a fast is a rise in mTOR or a rise in insulin. Mm-hmm. Since coffee and tea don't do either one of those, and by the way, neither do butter or MCT oil, you can have them during a fast in moderate amounts, which makes fasting much easier, especially for women. And it doesn't change mTOR, it doesn't change insulin, and you feel good. And this very much angers a few people who are what I'm going to call fasting obsessives, fasting. It's not about being pure because they're not being scientific. They're fasting dogmatics is what they are.
I have to challenge you on that.
You can challenge me on it.
So you could do something in your life, like just get excited, and it would affect your insulin or your your cortisol.
I didn't say cortisol. Because it turns out cortisol goes up when you intermittent fast anyway, because that's what happens when you're hungry. It's how your body liberates glucose from muscle tissue. So I don't worry about cortisol going up.
Okay, I could be in the mall and smell something delicious, like those cinnamon roll bun things, and affect my insulin.
That is correct.
So does that break my fast?
If you were doing something called a dopamine fast, technically it would. And there is a kind of fasting that my friend Cam Seppa coined a few years ago called dopamine fasting. And I wrote about it in Fast This Way, which is my big intermittent fasting book on the psychology and the science of fasting. And what Cam talked about, by the way, he runs Maximus Tribe, which is a new company I'm backing. that has a testosterone enhancement tech for men that's super cool. So what Cam said is, well, anything that raises dopamine is going to basically make your dopamine receptors less sensitive, just like anything that raises insulin could make your insulin receptors less sensitive. Therefore, to do a dopamine fast, be really bored, like no social media, no colors, sit in a couch and basically lay there for a day or for a weekend with like no people, no stimulation, no music. And by doing that, you can increase your happiness levels. You can. I just think it's easier to do a cold plunge because that has a similar effect.
So is he saying that because this is literally the book I'm reading right now is about this. So with the dopamine, because it comes in waves. So is he saying that if you stop, then the spike you get will be bigger?
Not that the spike will be bigger, but that when there is a spike, you'll feel it better. So it doesn't have, it'll be the same size spike as before, but since your receptors are more open to it, it'll feel bigger. It's almost identical to what happens during a cold plunge.
So same amount of dopamine, but you feel it more.
Yeah.
Even though it's literally what you're feeling. So who's feeling it more? Like, who is the part of you that's feeling that dopamine more if it's the same amount of dopamine? So right, but it's the same amount of dopamine. Are you saying like intuitively, like the person inside of you?
Sometimes you need 3 pieces of pizza to feel satisfied. Sometimes you need 1.
Yeah.
So your dopamine receptors will feel satisfied on 1 piece of dopamine pizza instead of 3.
Have you done a dopamine fast?
I have, because I read a book about it. I do everything.
How long did you?
Just for a weekend. It's just basically being bored. It's, you don't eat, you get water. On a dopamine fast, you probably shouldn't have coffee or tea because they're flavors. You shouldn't use essentials.
Oh, like, that was a question.
You want to be just bored. Like it kind of sucks. It's probably not worth it. Like I said, I do cold plunges because they have the similar dopamine sensitizing effect.
We had a question about the flavor. Oh, might have to. I'll find it in a bit. Another fasting question though. Tracy, she wants to know: can you humor us and take the clean fast challenge and not have anything but black coffee and water during your fast for 30 days and report back if you notice any difference?
You want me to do a 30-day fast?
A 30-day clean fast. So like during your fasting time, only black coffee and water. No supplements, no nothing, no.
No, that would be dumb.
I know. I thought that was going to be the answer.
So I don't know, like clean fast challenge? How about less effective fast challenge? We could just rebrand it that way. Because if you're not taking fasting mimetics while you're fasting, you're not getting the same benefits. Why would you not take spermidine during a fast? That's insane. Why would you not have electrolytes during a fast? That's insane. Why would you not amplify the benefits you get from your fast? Because, oh, I know. Because working hard and suffering bring you moral turpitude, is actually the word for it. But they bring you moral goodness. They make you a good person. I just wrote a whole book called Smarter Not Harder about why doing things the hard way and working hard and suffering actually don't get you results. In fact, the guy with the shovel digging a ditch who works really hard doesn't get paid as much as the guy with the tractor who gets it done in 5 minutes. So if you want to live in the past, you need to get rid of all your clothes that you didn't grow yourself and live in a cave. And it's dumb. And working hard sucks. The ability to work hard with all the best tools will get you thousands of times the results in your life. So no, I'm not doing some dumb, sorry guys, clean fast challenge because it doesn't work as well as doing it with tools. Right? I just don't get it. Like, why do we have Luddite fasting out here? I'm triggered right now. I identify as getting shit done.
And what does it mean if you're being triggered?
It means I need more coffee. Danger coffee, obviously.
Yeah, danger coffee.
Who knows what I might do.
Well,
Sorry, guys. I want to be like real nice about that one, but seriously, why is that clean? Like, where do your standards come from? And also, tea is full of oxalic acid. You probably don't want that during your fast. Like, why are you doing this to yourself? Do you know the components of what you're putting in and what you're not putting in? And I also want to know, are you using an air filter? Because if you're not, 30 pounds of air and your body fat and some protein you're going to lose, I kind of think that might be dirty. So, could be better.
Dave Asprey is not going to take the Clean Fast Challenge is the takeaway
but
from that.
But I love it that you're challenging people to fast.
Susie, you mentioned this, and I thought about this. I read Smarter Not Harder, which I highly recommend. And Susie said, he has said he will take spermidine for the rest of his life. Why didn't he recommend it in his book, Smarter Not Harder? I was thinking that too.
I didn't recommend it in Smarter Not Harder because if you read Superhuman, my book on longevity, I talked about how spermidine was a very promising longevity compound, but you couldn't buy it. And so what I did is I illegally imported probiotics from Japan that would make spermidine for me. And then when it came on the market, the first company to bring it to the US, I had it on my podcast to launch the company because I could finally buy it. And because of all that, and because I also read about it in my fasting book called Fast This Way that came out after that, I didn't feel like repeating it for people in Smarter Not Harder was there because it's not a book on fasting. It's a book on tools that give you really these 5 states of longevity or fitness or putting on muscle or losing weight very, very quickly. Kind of like the opposite of the Clean Fast Challenge, where you do the stuff that works even faster instead of even slower.
Okay. Solid answer. Getting more controversial. So, biohacking, Jean, who you might know him, he has 2 questions. Question 1, has biohacking turned into a cultish movement for rich people?
I was just talking with Melina, who wrote the first book on biohacking in Spanish for the entire Latin American market. And it's in its 5th edition. It's not for Latin American millionaires. In fact, my books are in 16 languages. All of the books have, here's what you can do for free using a principle of biohacking. Here's what you can do that's moderately expensive, like $50 a month. And here's what you can do that the crazy billionaires do. And I do my best to take the crazy billionaire stuff and I put it at Upgrade Labs. We're opening 27 locations and counting. You can go to ownandupgradelabs.com and you can open a franchise in your neighborhood to bring biohacking at an affordable level. So yeah, there's crazy billionaire types who oftentimes are buying the same kind of equipment I've tested for years at home because they can afford it. And I bless that because they're the ones who are funding things that are changing the world for all of us. And if you don't believe that, look at the history of mobile phones. They used to cost $50,000 and $20 a minute. And now they're like free. Even in Africa, they're $1 a month in some places. So yeah, biohacking is a movement about control of our own biology where you control your own biology, not your government, not your doctor, not your mommy. You get to be in control. And that's not just for billionaires. That is for all humans. And as a side note, 60% of biohackers have always been women.
That's a good segue. But before that, because you mentioned Upgrade Labs, Tracy wants to know if an Upgrade Lab is coming to Raleigh.
Ooh, I think we've talked with someone in Raleigh, but I don't think we've signed it yet. Wouldn't surprise me. If not, go to ownandupgradelabs.com. Could be you.
Might be coming. Okay, segue to women. We got a lot of questions about women and sex, if you're good with that.
Like I said, it's an Ask Me Anything, right?
Okay, Stephanie. She says, I'm very excited for this one. He intrigues me.
Ooh.
He has a much different way of sharing information. I've recently been seeing posts about sex. He was discussing orgasms. What does he think about orgasms? I read more orgasms are better for women, but less for men. Kind of ironic. And I will comment on that. Like me, I'll comment. I've had John Gray on my other show a few times, and I believe he is a proponent of this idea that women, all the orgasms all the time, and men, not so much.
That's actually not John's perspective.
That's not John's perspective?
No.
Are you sure?
John and I have been friends for years. John Gray, the Mars and Venus guy. What he says is, and I'm going to correct it, ejaculation for men is not good for them,
Okay.
but orgasms are good for them. And most men listening, and most women actually, believe that orgasm and ejaculation in men are the same thing. Men can orgasm and not ejaculate. So it turns out this isn't new sharing for me. If you read my book, Game Changers, going back to, I think, 2015 maybe, I took 400 episodes of the Human Upgrade podcast and I used a statistician, because we didn't have AI that could do it at the time, to figure out the common elements that all of these people had done to focus on in a structured interview about how do you, the question was, what are the 3 pieces of advice you have for someone who wants to perform better at every part of being a human being? And after 400 answers, I came up with a set of roughly 50 laws that came out of this. So don't follow me. I don't want to be a guru. I curate gurus and I learn from them and then I structure it so you can learn it better. And what I did is I published my ejaculation and orgasm data for an entire year in the book. There's a graph. And there's an equation. And the equation looks like this. This is for men only. Women do not do this. It would be bad for you. And you take your age in years, minus 7,
Okay.
and then you divide that by 4. So let's say you're like 40. So age in years, 40 minus 7 is 33 divided by 4. How many times does 4 go into 33?
I was doing my own age.
Okay, it'd be 8. So what's your own age?
6.
6? Okay, so if
That's
you're
the answer.
if
No,
you're a
that's
guy,
that's
if you
the
look into the math, you
calculation.
just disclosed. So you're if you're 40, the answer is about 8, so you're under 40. So then your answer is about 6. That's the number of days between ejaculations for guys. So don't ejaculate more often than that. And
Oh, for men.
for
Okay.
men.
Yeah.
And this is really important. If you're a woman, there's a different equation that's never been written in all of Taoism. I searched everywhere, but I did make up the equation for you. So what this means, guys, is that if you want to, and this equation is to maintain your health. If you want to live a long time, and this is written, and I've interviewed.
You wrote it.
John, no, I've interviewed John Gray. I've interviewed Montauk Chia, who's a very famous guy who teaches this stuff. This is Tantra, this is Qigong, and I've studied these esoteric practices. So what you end up with is you go, okay, if you want to live forever, and that's what all these sciences are about, was longevity. It's ejaculate once every 30 days and keep your orgasm for men to less than an hour. So I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm going to test this. So for a year, I gathered my data. I did my happiness number every day. Like, how much do I like my life, my career, my job, my company, family life, just how good is life? And I also tracked carefully on a graph ejaculation versus orgasm versus masturbation versus sex. And it pissed me off, but absolutely there is an ejaculation hangover, and over-ejaculating does deplete in the East they call your chi. So only for men. But then for women, because a lot of these practices, they didn't talk about women very much. So I'm like, all right, let's look into the research. And I did talk to John Gray about this, and he wasn't public with his comments about this at the time, but we had private conversations. And John and many others will say, okay, and now science supports this as well, that for women, orgasms are not depleting. They're actually enhancing. Your EQ goes up, your oxytocin goes up, and things like that. And there's actually 7 to 9 different kinds of orgasms women can have.
7 to 9.
Mm-hmm. It depends on who you listen to, but there's probably 9. I always go with the bigger number.
Which are debated.
I'm not going to go there on this. I got to finish telling you the equation for women.
Okay.
Plus, you don't want to get this banned on whatever platform it'll be on.
Yeah.
So, all right, here's the equation for women. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
It's the number of orgasms until you feel like you're going to die, plus 2.
Is how many orgasms?
Will keep you alive longer.
Okay.
Regularly.
I will make a note of that.
And by the way, guys, there's no way you're going to be able to do that for your partner unless you learn how to not ejaculate all the time. So once you realize you're right now for guys, if you're getting to the end of the act, it's going to feel like you're going to die. Because you're like, if I do not finish right now, and then your body convinces you to finish, and you go, God, why did I do that? So what you do is you break that, just like intermittent fasting. Oh, I'm not going to starve to death if I don't eat for a day. You're not going to die if you don't finish. And what happens is once you decouple that, then you are always ready to do it again and do it again. And what does that do? It raises your oxytocin and it raises your partner's oxytocin, and you don't get the 24 to 48 hour well-documented testosterone drop after you ejaculate. Bottom line, you want to be a powerful man, you shouldn't be at the mercy of ejaculating, and your partnership will probably improve as a result of that.
So were you at the mercy of ejaculating when you did not make your goal?
You know, I guess technically, I will tell you that when I was trying to do 30 days without ejaculating, that was really hard when you're learning to do something like that. So I remember a few times, like on day 23, I'm like, you're publishing my data. It's like, okay, none, and then oops. Okay, start over again. So it was a practice to be able to get to 30 days while having regular sex, right? And
Yeah.
It's a massive improvement in quality of life, and that's why John Gray is real public about this now as well.
Well, congratulations. You answered Scott's question. He wanted to know, by restraining ejaculation, does that increase your vitality? So I'm guessing
It
yes.
does. And you know, the ejaculate once every 30 days
Yeah.
or less is the Qigong master's perspective on that. There's probably like a once a month is probably a good number. And also if you're younger, that's probably about right. But at least the equation do that.
Okay. We'll put that in the show notes. And Renee wants to know, if you are on a date, what is the biggest turn on to you for a girl to order at the restaurant? Is there a food that a woman could order on a date that would turn you on?
Um, I would just say a woman who orders a grass-fed ribeye is by definition an attractive woman.
What temperature?
Mm, probably rare, maybe medium rare. But if it's above that, it's like, oh my God. Like I try not to, judge anything out loud.
What about blue?
Blue's good.
Okay.
Just, yeah, if it's burned, you're like, oh, how sad. But honestly, I don't judge people based on what they eat. It's how you show up in the world. So
That's really kind of you.
for real, I might tease them, and people tease me too. But if whatever you're eating, you can't be teased by someone who cares about you and is nice to you, then you probably have a problem. Like I am dating someone who is, we'll say, wannabe vegan. She's not a vegan, because she eats, dairy and chicken and fish. But I'm just like, I'm gonna get her to eat.
So
steak.
is not
But she doesn't
pescatarian.
eat that much chicken and fish, and she sort of says, I kind of want to be vegan, but I don't think she really does. I think she's teasing me. But regardless, I don't care what you eat as long as it works for you. But when people say, I'm eating this and I'm in pain all the time and my brain doesn't work, and you're like, maybe it's the MSG, and like, no, it's not the MSG. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever.
So we have a question about that. I have a really quick question though. Have you found a way to make the restaurant actually give you a rare steak? Or
Order it blue and you'll get it rare usually.
I found out a way
Okay, how
recently.
do you do it?
I asked to order a steak for dessert, and it was when the kitchen was closed, so they were not about it. I was like, listen, you can just like get the raw steak, just like put it on for a second, I'll be good. And that worked.
That would work. Then again, you're gonna eat late. You probably could just
Yum.
you probably could just say you want 1 minute per side, and you're good.
Yeah, I'm still working on that one.
Yeah, blue is good.
Speaking of, to what you just said, Nancy, she wants to know, why does he keep referring to raw vegan as his gripe with veganism? Whole Foods plant-based has some impressive results in science, particularly without oils, and this is vastly different from a raw diet. Is it a running joke? Is it residual trauma from too many sprouts? I can do without kale, but I'm very tired of my cozy meals being lumped into a small fringe extreme lifestyle. By the way, I am a Dave fan, and I drink Danger coffee every morning. No shade here. Can't wait to hear the interview. So I've thought about this too.
I love the honest questions there. I talk about how I've been a vegan and a raw vegan because I've done both. And being a raw vegan shows a devout commitment to a cult-like belief system. It's like being in the inner circle of priests of the vegan cult. So I just use that as like a proof that like I'm one of you, and my sprouters and juicers and blenders and dehydrators and all that stuff that's probably in the garage somewhere. I don't know. I don't use it anymore. So I wasn't just a raw vegan. I want to be really clear on that. The problem is that all of these staple, cozy vegan foods are full of oxalates. They're full of phytic acid. They're full of carbohydrates. They're full of lectins. You can't get oil-free. You just get plant oils. You can eat corn. It's got corn oil in it. You can eat soy, which is full of all those bad things, plus some estrogen mimics. It's also got soybean oil in it. You can eat nuts. It's got omega-6s in it, so it's not oil-free. And if you're talking about a really radical fringe, the zero-fat 1970s vegan movement might be even more extreme than the raw vegan movement. So that said, is there an argument for a zero-fat, relatively high-starch, low-toxin diet that contains plants that are not full of oxalates, phytates, or lectins that are bad for you? Nobody knows because they've never tried it. But metabolically, there probably is a case for that, at least for a brief period, as there's a case for being a vegan for a brief period. If you read or if you listen to The Human Upgrade, I did a podcast with James Clements,
I have a
about a book
question from
called
him.
The Switch from James.
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you want it?
In a minute. So James is a friend and a fellow longevity enthusiast I've known for 25 years. This is a guy who flew around and got all these really, really old centenarian people's DNA. So James actually says, be a vegan and then be carnivore. Be vegan, then carnivore on a monthly basis to live forever. It's a good argument, good book, and a cool guy.
I would posit the Kempner diet might be what you were saying.
The Kempner diet, remind
Do you know
me.
about this? It's like, it was
Probably
basically
read
like
it, but
rice
don't
and
understand.
sugar, and he reversed people's diabetes.
Oh, I believe that. It's that same thing. It's the zero fat, high starch sugar diet. I do not believe anymore that sugar causes diabetes. I think excess sugar is bad for you from a dopamine perspective and a gut bacteria perspective. I think diabetes now for years now is caused by omega-6 fats primarily
Yes.
and toxins, metabolic dysfunction.
Well, we do have a question from A. James. This is supposed to be anonymous, so this is A. James.
James.
James, not a mutual friend, James. He says, will you be talking to Dave about is it Follistatin gene therapy?
Yeah.
He got the gene therapy himself, maybe for promoting it, but says it only lasts a couple of months and then you must do it again to maintain muscle mass. He's been, quote, getting ripped since becoming single again, LOL.
So, two correct things. The gene therapy is good for up to 2 years, not a couple of months. Go to daveasprey.com/gene therapy for info about that and a link to the episode in it. And no, I did this because I wrote about gene therapy in my longevity book in 2016, 2017. That's Superhuman if you want to read how to live to at least 180. Since then, a couple of people have come out with books saying we might live for an extra 10 years, but it's all about health span. And if you just exercise enough, and that's like Neanderthal longevity from the 80s, and it's kind of gross. So the reason I did this is in my book, I said we will be able to do gene therapy soon, and we'll have iPSC edited stem cells. The guy who created these, who's on the podcast, along with his partner Mac, read the book in medical school and said, oh, I made enough money selling Tesla shares. How about I build this tech for longevity instead of being a regular doctor? So I got it because I'm going to live to at least 180. And I'd have got it even if I never talked about it. But I talk about it because it's my job to talk about the stuff I do to live to 180 so you don't have to spend millions of dollars trying it all out for yourself. That's why I did it.
I have a question. When you write your books, do you write your books?
Yes, I write my books. Now, what is the definition of writing a book?
Every sentence in the book, did that come from your creative inspiration that you then penned?
No book published today, unless it's self-published, is that way, because you work with a team of editors at your publisher. Literally, before any of my books is out there, it has been handled by at least a dozen people to help me get my words and my thoughts in order. So to write a New York Times bestseller that's going to be read by hundreds of thousands of people, I would be irresponsible if I only wrote every word myself. And the publisher would be irresponsible if they published it without going through every single word, doing fact checking, telling me that this sentence looks stupid and here's how it should be better. It's like a team of critics working on it. And there's absolutely stages where it's collaborative. We're like, oh, we want to get these ideas in here. How do we do it? So I'll go back and forth with someone. There's usually a primary editor, or we'll call it writing partner, where we'll have the conversations to structure it, and then we go back and forth. So I don't think you can legitimately say anyone wrote every word in their book unless they're a first-time author. It's a team effort if it's going to be a worthy book.
Yeah. The legal department's fun.
Legal department's great fun. How about you?
Did I write my book?
Yeah.
Yes.
Was every single word in the book yours?
I mean, yes. And then it got, well, self-published, yes.
Okay.
And then traditionally published, which I actually brought you a copy of my book because 10 years ago, I went to the opening of the Bulletproof at the time coffee shop in Santa Monica. I've told you this before, but I'm telling you again. And I came with my self-published book at the time. And I was like, I'm going to give Dave Asprey my book. And I was dressed up in like a cocktail dress, like all sparkly. And then they were like, Dave's gone. I was like, okay. And so I gave them the self-published one. I was like, can you please give this to Dave? And then I walked away and I was like, someday I will give him my book in person.
Well, here you
and
go.
I have it down there.
Thank you.
So I'm giving it to you.
Oh.
But to answer your question, that's the real version, like the traditionally published. And I think I can say that I wrote every sentence and then they would say like, oh, we need to put this in here because of blah, blah, blah. So then I would like write a new sentence.
Your editor didn't just say, "Here's my suggested edit," and you clicked accept.
Well,
Like there's collaborative tools for getting it out there in a way that's good. And so I don't
well,
think there's any shade on doing or not doing that. It's just when you have a book that's really going to be seen by so many people, you need like beta readers to go through it. Like, no, this doesn't
yeah,
work. This doesn't work. And then do I care if it's me who says, this sentence was in a passive voice and I missed it? Can you put it in an active voice? No, I'll just want to do
that's true.
that. That's it's like I don't wash my own socks. I get help with that, and
You don't wash your own socks.
I'm grateful to have help for that, and I do that because it takes more time to wash my socks than the value that's provided. So I can focus on this podcast because I pay someone to help me with that, and I'm super grateful for it, right? But it's the same thing with the book. I do the strategic parts and the important parts, and if someone says you need to reorganize these 3 sentences, I don't care. Can you copy and paste them instead of me? And I feel good about that.
I have an example. I recently interviewed last week Nina Teichels on my
love
show.
Nina.
And she's good friends with Gary Tobbs. And
I like Gary too.
I've had Gary on the show.
Okay.
And that reminded me that when I tried to traditionally publish my book, they were like not having it with Gary. They were like, you got to put in some sort of disclaimer. So I went in and like made a disclaimer.
You want to know something really funny?
Sure.
I interviewed Gary Tobbs on my podcast, probably one of the first 20 out of more than 1,000 episodes now.
Oh, wow.
And after the interview, I said, Gary, I'm writing my fertility book, and I need, like, I don't know what to do, but I've been writing it for 5 years to self-publish this about how I was able to have 2 kids, even though the mother of my kids was 39 and 42 at the time we had them. She was infertile when I met her. So, like, there's a lot of knowledge in here. And it was Gary who introduced me to my first agent. And literally the next day was so nice. He sent a note. So Gary Tobbs, if you hear this, thank you, brother, for your support early in my writing career. I don't forget those things.
I love Gary. Okay, 2 last questions related to all of this. Leah says, I love the quote, what have you changed your mind on based off of new information that you once believed strongly type question. So it has been a long time. I'm sure his views have changed over the years. I would love to know what matters to him now. And then Teresa said, is there anything he's written about in his books that makes him cringe because he doesn't agree with it today?
Okay, there's the cringiest part is when I came out with the Bulletproof Diet cookbook. I feel like I was bullied into having some recipes with kale.
Really?
Yeah, because at the time, like, kale had a $6 million marketing budget from the Kale Marketing Association. And like so many people were just kale. And I'm like, guys, kale and spinach are not that good for you. But if you want to have a little bit, you can have a little bit if you must. But what I did in the first chapter of the Bulletproof Diet. Okay,
disclaimer?
No, this is what I did. So I'm like, okay, here's the things that are messing with you. Lectins, there's a whole genre of lectin books, right? Oxalates, they're having their day right now, and it's only going to get better. Right? And then there's phytic acid, which was in my most recent book, which is a big problem. And I talked about histamine, which is also having its day right now because of long COVID and all this stuff. And I talked about intermittent fasting and omega-6 fats. So these were the universe to play with in the Bulletproof Diet on all those different levels. But what I didn't do, probably because the data wasn't organized yet, is I wasn't aggressive enough on lowering oxalates, especially being a former vegan or a former whole foods plant-based diet, because the more whole the food is, the more toxins from plants there are. That's why, like brown rice, every rice eating culture, if you can afford it, you eat the white rice because the toxins are more in the brown part. And the same thing with wheat. Whole wheat is for peasants because you don't care if they die, but the wealthier people eat the white flour because it has less toxins and they get their nutrients from the side of beef. So sad, that's how the world works. Now, the fact that some 70s guys like eat brown rice because fiber, not knowing about lectins or arsenic or oxalates or any other nonsense. So anyway, I was not aggressive enough on oxalates. I should have just said, guys, beets are stupid. Almonds, especially almond milk, which wasn't much of a thing, is stupid. And I should have said, raspberries are not worth it. Eat more blueberries. I'm a big blueberry fan.
I love blueberries.
But raspberries, the number of, especially women I've spoken with who had like interstitial cystitis, like serious pain in the reproductive system, they give up these foods. Oh, and kale and spinach are in there, and I've always been against those guys. Spinach is the very worst, besides rhubarb. And I just feel like I wasn't aggressive enough. So my apologies if you ever had a recipe with almonds or kale in them that came from my book.
Do not make that recipe.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
Welcome.
my first in-person podcast.
And I got to say, congratulations. You're doing a really good job of moving the biohacking movement forward. I love it that we have younger people, we have women who are doing it, and it's so important because this idea that we have control of our own biology, it's intrinsic to being human. But the reason that 60% of my followers have always been women, sometimes like 55%, but it's always been slightly more than half. It's because women generally are better biohackers than men. Because for a lot of guys, including me when I was younger, it's like, well, there's no bone sticking out down here, I'm probably fine, right? And we're maybe not that tuned in, but because women's bodies change on a regular basis, you notice because it's different today. So the sense of interoception, which is the nervous system feeling of what's going on in the body.
Knowing where, like, what is happening where.
Well, that's proprioception.
Oh.
That's
what's interoception?
Interoception is just the broader word for everything, including like your gut. So proprioception is where am I in space?
Yeah.
Interoception is my gut tingly or, is it gas? Like, you don't know. Okay. So there's all these different feelings and a lot of your emotions.
It's like the vibe of where things are.
They say like the issues in the tissues and stuff like that. And it's how do you feel what's going on in your inner world, but not the cognitive inner world, but
like physically,
the somatic inner world.
Yeah.
So women are better at that on average than men because you just deal with a changing landscape, and we're kind of like, oh, I think I'm okay. So this is why I think there are so many women biohackers. There are also so many intuitive healers who are women. The last 15 or so years of moving the biohacking movement forward, I've been very carefully bringing more breath work, more meditation, more intuition, and more, we'll say, esoteric practices in that are based on somatic sense of the self. I know they're real because I run a neuroscience institute 40 years is in, right? And that lets us measure whether it's happening or whether we're just deceiving ourselves. It is happening.
Well, thank you. And I will say to that point, listeners, friends, I would not be doing what I'm doing today. I would not have this podcast if not for Dave Asprey. Honestly, I was experiencing health conditions and I started listening to your show and I just found things that worked and I've been following you since then. So literally this would not be happening if not for you. And that's not just me, it's the entire world. So I cannot recommend enough getting Dave's books, all the things. You'll learn everything, especially Fast This Way, if you want to know all about fasting. So thank you.
You are so welcome, and just keep inspiring people. You're part of building the movement of biohacking. It is a growing global movement, and it's here to stay. So thanks for helping.
Team Biohacking. Thank you. All right.